government of President Bola Tinubu. Reforms after reforms after reforms. But this morning we're focusing on development commissions in this country, especially now that we have seen a bit of change in that regard. What exactly is the mandate of each of these development commissions? Four of them, as it stands today, are they already, for those that have been here for a while, particularly the Niger Delta Commission, Development Commission, been able to understand, first of all, what their mandate is, and then put in place structures that help to drive the narrative in the right direction. This morning, we're joined by a development lawyer, someone who is interested in conversations such as these. Eze Oyenkbere. He joins us live via Zoom from Nigeria's capital here in Abuja. Mr. Oyenkbere, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, first off, for joining us on Global Morning today.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
So now we have the Ministry of Regional Development, apparently one of the reforms recently undertaken by the Tinubu-led administration in Nigeria. NDDC has been here for a while. For the most part, the conversations around the NDDC in particular has been about controversy and what the commission is not doing right. When we set up the NDDC some years ago and followed up with a few other development commissions across regions in this country, and given where we are today, does it look like the mandate was understood, and do we have results to show for that?
Thank you. Let me start by saying the idea of regional commissions has been abused in Nigeria. First of all, there was a real need for the Niger Delta Development Commission, considering the fact that this region was at some point in time contributing more than 90% of the revenue of the federal and state governments and local governments, as well as generating over 90% of all our foreign exchange earnings. And the process of that contribution involves serious degradation of the environment, oil pollution in land, in the sea, thereby stopping the owners of the land from farming, fishing, and doing other economic activities. And that kind of environmental poisoning will take decades for it to go away. It's almost forever. It's not going to get better in the lifetime of any citizen. So there was a real need to develop the Niger Delta because we were taking a lot from them and we were polluting their environment. And of course, this is coming from the background of the allocation and sharing formula, the only one that was negotiated by the founding fathers of Nigeria, the one that was negotiated by the Azikiwes, the Awolowos, and the Saduanas. In the First Republic, we had derivation being 50%. You take 50% and give over 50% to the center. But at some point in time, derivation was totally ignored. So there was really a reason to give back and rehabilitate the Niger Delta. But the others that came could not be founded on a reason. It was just the idea that, okay, Niger Delta has one. The next one we had was the Northeast. What happened in the Northeast was self-inflicted. People came up and said Western education is a sin. They want to impose their religious views and others, and started destroying lives and property. Before we could say Jack, there was a development commission. And then thereafter, you had Northeast, Southwest, North Central. It became ridiculous. There was absolutely no need for these development commissions. If you look at even the NNDC, just like you pointed out, all the valuable information that the public can remember has been about fraud, corruption, blatant stealing. Of course, we are all living witnesses to the off-the-mic syndrome in the National Assembly, and the person at the center of it now is the current distinguished number 3 citizen, the Senate President. And there are cases where projects have been duplicated, both in an NDC budget and in the budget of state and local government. So there has been no marked improvement in the lives of people of the Niger Delta flowing from the monies provided under the NNDC budget. But that is not to say that NNDC should be scrapped. If the challenge is of corruption and mismanagement of the NNDC funds, then that problem should be fixed. But I don't find any need for any development commission in the northeast, northwest, north central, southwest, or southeast. The southeast would have needed the development commission so many years ago, immediately after the Civil War, when there was massive destruction. But we didn't get that, so that has been overtaken. So I do not see the basis for these development commissions. They are simply a waste of energy and public resources.
Okay, my colleague Queen Agaba will ask you a few questions shortly, but let's establish this real quick. For example, now we have, of course, the Niger Delta Development Commission. We have for the Northeast, for the Northwest, and of course for the Southwest. So we do not have for the North Central, we do not have for the Southeast. You already made allusion to that of the Southeast, which you say is even long overdue, because that should already have been in place following the damage that came from the Civil War a couple of decades ago. There are people now saying that for the sake of equity and fairness, we should have for the North Central and for the Southeast. How ridiculous or otherwise does that sound, given our economic realities?
Now, what we need is to scrap all these development commissions, maybe with the exception of the Niger Delta Development Commission. Why do I say so? The quantum of resources available for the governments of Nigeria, the state governments, local governments, all their MDAs and parastatals to run is finite. If it is 100 billion, it is not going to increase simply because you created development commission. What we are doing is to bring in new layers of wasteful bureaucracy, because the people that appoint to these places are not technocrats. These are politicians who are looking at it as an opportunity to steal. So it is not about equalization. I say the Southeast would have needed one immediately after the Civil War, considering the massive destruction of property that followed that war and dislocation of livelihoods. But as at now, in fairness, I don't think anybody in the Southeast needs a development commission as an answer, because it is not going to increase the resources coming to the commission, coming to the Southeast. It is still about the same resources that would have otherwise been available to the governors. So instead of creating a new bureaucracy that will serve no purpose, you create a commission. The first thing the 10 or 15 of them will do is to get a brand new SUV, maybe valued at about $100,000. You pay for their office, you pay for their accommodation, you simply waste the money before you begin to talk of corruption in contracting that goes with such commissions. So it is not necessary. All of them should be scrapped except the one for the Niger Delta. And even the one in the Niger Delta, or maybe returning a little bit of the one in the Northeast, they should have a sunset clause in terms of you give them a number of years. It shouldn't be a commission forever. There should be a sunset clause. If you have a commission that has been there for 25 years, we should sit down and do a review of what the monies that have been disbursed to the commission and what they've achieved, and whether it is still necessary to continue to operate such a commission. So there should be sunset clauses in anywhere where it is deemed fit to have a commission. Should not be a commission in perpetuity.
Okay, so let's look at something else. We now have the Ministry of Development, as it were, to more like oversee these different commissions, 4 of them, like we already mentioned. In the meantime, the Ministry of Niger Delta, as we used to know it, has been scrapped. So on that front, you have people from the Niger Delta region, chief of them being Edwin Clark himself, saying that it was the President Tinubu government getting off on the wrong foot by scrapping the Niger Delta ministry. Now that we have a supervisory ministry to, as it were, just take care of these these development commissions, how much have we prioritized in this instance? Because if on the one hand we're saying we do not need these commissions, development commissions as they are called, why then do we need a ministry to even oversee them? Is that not us going back to the same old place where we've been?
Well, just like it's been said, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu thinks he's doing the people in the Niger Delta favor. Therefore, let it be equalized across the federation. And I do not see, first of all, I told you I do not see any need for this commission. And I do not see any need for this special ministry that will now be supervising all of them. If you cannot trust a commission with resources and expect them to deliver, what value will the ministry add? Another layer of bureaucracy written down the neck of the commission that are already interested in mismanaging the money. So at the end of the day, these commissions, the supervising ministry, is not bringing any new fund. And I don't think it is fair on Mr. President to deprive the people of the Niger Delta of the ministry, because as we still speak, oil resources are still the bulk of where we get our money from. And I'm sure if the military had not intervened, if we didn't have the collapse of that First Republic, you could have imagined the take of the people of the Niger Delta if they had to kick back about 50% of their resources, which is the whole idea of federalism. And for you to simply think that because everybody now wants a commission, you should equalize. Every law must have a history. There's what we call the mischief rule of interpretation of statutes. That mischief rule also applies as an idea behind the law. What was the mischief in the region before the enactment of that Niger Delta Development Commission or the ministry? What mischief was that? What developmental challenge was that ministry or the commission meant to kill? That's the question you have to ask. You don't simply get a commission simply because you have a good number of your men and women, you think you are populous in the National Assembly, so you maneuver your way, or because you supported a certain president. I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is being grossly unfair on the people of the Niger Delta, and it's up to them to take the decision on how they respond to him. They know what to do at the appropriate time.
Okay, well, so you're of the opinion that development commissions should be scrapped, but except for, that of the Niger Delta. But I think I want us to look at how we can be able to balance, because most times we've seen ambitious goals as to the financial limitations that there is. But is there
funding,
right? Is there a possible way we can have balance to these ambitious goals and then realistic financial limitations that we have? Can we have a balance? And then moving forward, what key reforms do you think can be implemented or taken into considerations or in place to enable us have sustainability in these commissions?
Now, when you talk of balance, I hope you are not talking of balance between other regions and the Niger Delta region, because the whole idea of justice is about treating like cases alike. If you are not bringing anything to the table and somebody is bringing something to the table, there can be no question of balance. And the process of bringing something to the table for everybody to share involves a degradation of their livelihoods and environment. So the point I've made is that we are not getting any extra money, generating any extra revenue because of these commissions. And all that they will do is to bring more red tape to the table, bring more mouths that wish to share from the proverbial national cake. So the idea of balance is that if you cannot even guarantee accountability and transparency in existing ministries, departments, and agencies, how do you want to guarantee it in these new commissions or within their mandate? So it should be a system-wide thing about ensuring value for money, ensuring that round pegs are put in round holes and square ones in square ones. That's the only way you can begin to think of whatever money, assuming you will go ahead and maintain this commission, the regional development commissions. At the end of the day, if there is no transparency and accountability, the money will be fritter. So that's why I keep saying, I do not see the value they're going to add. New money is coming to them. It's still the same old money that is now being shared among so many other people. But for the purpose of balance, balance should be to ensure that the poor people, the vulnerable people in these regions are able to benefit from whatever resources that will be made available to these commissions.
Let's look at something else, the element of corruption, which you also mentioned in passing just a while ago, because you were saying that when we take a look at these commissions and even the supervisory ministry as we now have it, the men and women who call the shots in these entities are not necessarily technocrats or people who are professional enough to drive radical changes as expected within the confines of their mandates. Instead, they are politicians who are either being compensated for the most part for whatever work or contribution they are making to their respective political parties, or they are just allies and associates and cronies of politicians, those who are elected or appointed or what have you. How do we, because whether you like it or not, these commissions are here now. So whether we're going to scrap them tomorrow or not is a different conversation altogether. Therefore, my question is, how do we make sure that while on the one hand, we're striving, we're working our fingers out every day to ensure these development commissions deliver their optimum to those they are set up to serve. On the other hand, we're also able to minimize graft in such a way that we don't have a reoccurrence of that, as you mentioned a while ago, off your mic moment.
Well, it is now left on those who are supposed to benefit to begin to make their voice heard and to demand accountability and to demand resources that should come to them. And they can be facilitated with the work of the media, investigative journalism, and civil society organizations working on anti-corruption. First of all, we should have a system of insisting, contrary to what goes on in the Niger Delta Development Commission, of having their budgets in the public sphere. I can't recall having seen the budgets of the Niger Delta Development Commission. If you go to their website, you will see nothing. So that provides the first room for fraud and massive corruption. Secondly, their accounts should be properly audited. For instance, up till now, where is the audit report that President Buhari commissioned on the face of the NDDC? It's still shrouded in secrecy. Budget should be available for everybody. Opportunities for people, the locals, to make input into the budgeting process. And regular audits, we should also be available so that people can follow up on them. And like I said, the media and civil society have a very big role to play in ensuring the transparency of these commissions. And most importantly, the tone of leadership from the top. If you are being sent to a commission to compensate you, either you contributed to Mr. President becoming president, or that you failed election, you are a staunch party supporter, or you bankrolled the party during elections. If that is the basis of nominating members of these commissions, then you know we're in trouble. We are going to continue business as usual. But if it is based on integrity and ability to deliver the goods for the common people, then there could be hope. But I don't see any hope, because the present administration is simply one of patronage and recycling of worn out and extremely corrupt individuals who simply are misguided and don't understand the roles they're supposed to play in a developing society.
Okay, let's talk about a different angle to this conversation, Mr. Onyekperi. All of this, many persons will vehemently argue, is about oil money, all right? Whether you talk about the commission in the Northeast or somewhere in Northwest or South or the Southwest, it's all about the oil money, because the monies or the funding for running these commissions essentially comes from crude. Nigeria is an oil-dependent country for several years, particularly in the lifetime of this Fourth Republic. We've talked about how to diversify. We've talked about how to become less dependent on oil so that we can expand our economy into services, into tech and what have you. That just hasn't happened yet. Should this not be an opportunity, maybe a golden one, for us to take a second and very dispassionate look at our economic model in this country and ask ourselves very serious and honest questions as to how we want to run our national life, so to speak, in such a way that we are less dependent on oil and begin to look at other areas like tech, finance, and agriculture, for example?
To facilitate this movement away from a crude oil or gas-dependent economy needs creative, honest, patriotic, and accountable minds to be able to run it. Otherwise, The current crop of leadership don't look ready. They are not prepared, and they are not interested in a proper diversification of the economy. Beyond the rhetorics that has been there since Obasanjo's days, everybody comes and says he wants to diversify. Diversification is not a mantra. It's about definite and concrete steps. So I agree, we should even start from the low-hanging fruits. We were doing agriculture before the crude oil became more predominant. We can get back to a lot of investments in agriculture, not just producing cash crops and exporting them, but adding value by processing them. For instance, cocoa into beverages, chocolate, which could fetch more money, palm oil into different confectionaries and semi-finished products that can be used in the pharmaceutical and beverage and the beauty industries, the groundnuts and all of them, the rubber, processing them into tires and all whatnot. We can start from there. Then we already have some little foundation in industrialization. We have plants today that are manufacturing cars or assembling them. We can expand them further and use policy to make sure that the majority of Nigerians drive those cars. And then, you know, when you talk about industrialization, we are busy going around the world saying we are looking for investors. Look at what is happening to the Dangote refinery. The biggest and most massive investment by anybody in Nigeria. I mean, can't see any foreign investor bringing $19 billion. And we are told we are importing refined petroleum with between 30 and 35% of our foreign exchange earnings. We therefore put a strain on that foreign exchange, contributing to the depreciation of the naira on a daily basis. The Dangote refinery has the capacity to produce much more than we need, satisfy local demand, and have for export. And he's claiming that he has hundreds of millions of liters stocked in tanks. Nobody is buying. And all I hear are lousy commentators saying market forces, NMPC, marketers should continue importing fuel. Who does that if you are trying to diversify your economy, if you are trying to show up the value of your naira? So that's why I'm telling you, the current leadership, they don't just get it. They don't just understand what the issues are. They are simply occupying space, creating a false renewed hope because there is no hope. It's a hopeless one. So at least by now, we should have stopped fuel importation, PMS, diesel, and all we do through the regulatory agencies to ensure that the Dangote refinery is producing first-class and world-class petrol, diesel, and other things that come out of a refinery. Then the federal consumer protection and the agency will make sure that the quality, they don't form a monopoly, okay? They go against them so that they don't form a monopoly, so that they sell it at really good and reasonable price, and then you create more jobs in Nigeria and stop wasting foreign exchange. So there's so much that can be done both in tech, in finance, but it depends on leadership, understanding their role. So today we don't have that leadership for now.
Well said. But I want us to now look at political interference. You'd agree with me that in most development commissions, we have cases of political interference, but particularly with the Niger Delta Development Commission, how much of political interference, how has that, affected the core mandate, the fulfillment of the core mandate of the NDDC, and what are the resultant effects if we continue to have political interferences on communities around the Niger Delta?
Well, the Niger Delta Development Commission, the board and everything is appointed by the Mr. President. And so over time, the elite of the region and members of these boards have seen that commission as a slush fund. And also Mr. President and other previous presidents saw it as an opportunity to appoint their cronies, a job for the boys, where they come and share things. Because if you can't imagine all the stories coming out of that agency, which is run nicodemously, hardly would you see them giving a proper account of the resources available to them and where they spend it, and whether they are not duplicating projects with local governments and state governments in the region. So everything is done in a hush-hush tone. So the result is that the poor in Niger Delta, who are supposed to be given access to basic livelihood services are not getting those services, particularly women and children. They are not getting those services. Education is not improving. Health is not improving. There are no opportunities for jobs and livelihoods coming up to engage the teeming youthful population. So that's why you have these constant challenges. And up till now, vandalization of pipelines and oil facilities is still a common day occurrence. So this was supposed to take care and absorb the energies of these youth so that they become creative instead of being destructive. This was also supposed to give them an opportunity to acquire skills, to improve livelihoods, to improve access to education and health, but that has not been done. So there's a huge opportunity cost waiting to be tapped if and only if the elites of the region can come together and say enough is enough. Let us stop this madness and see what we can do. The other day, Senator Ned Nwoko was saying that the allocation that comes to Delta State is more than what the entire states in the Southeast get. And yet nothing is happening. Okay? So when you see that kind of scenario, 5 states in the Southeast getting about or less than what states like Delta is getting, and still you can't see any practical developments that make them far ahead or better, then you can begin to understand that a lot is wrong. Because this is the state allocation, not even talking of what should come to the state from NDDC and other development agencies. So a lot is wrong and a lot needs to be fixed.
Let's wrap it up now, Mr. Onyekbere. You mentioned a while ago the degradation of the Niger Delta on account of the exploration that has been going on there since the mid to late 1950s. This has been several decades and we are not anywhere close to stopping just yet. But just a few years ago, under the leadership of former President Muhammadu Buhari, there was a 20 billion naira funding being put in place, at least so we're told, for the cleaning of Ogoni land. We are still having that conversation. We have not seen any practical thing being done in that regard. Ogoni land is just a small part of River State. We're not even talking about the entire stretch of the Niger Delta region as we know it. Let's talk about how we can, maybe not in a practical sense, reverse this devastation, but halt it in such a way that IOCs do not continue to exploit the people of that region, where you bring out a fish from the water and you see crude practically coming out with the fish. People can't drink water, they hardly can bathe with it, and you see all of the damage being done on account of the degradation of their soil. How do we check this and ensure that we do not shoot ourselves in the foot any further?
Well, we've already shot ourselves and there is no plan to stop the shooting. 2 things may have happened. Either the money promised by Buhari was not released, or it was partially released, or it has been released and the usual cabals have stolen the money and offed the mic as usual. Or Buhari just did the mantra to make noise to be seen to be interested in the plight of the Niger Delta people, especially using the Ogoni, since their case has been ringing a bell for decades now across the whole world. So, like you pointed out, Ogoni is just one small part of the Niger Delta. So, if 20 billion, assuming it was released, was not enough to do anything tangible in Ogoni land, you can imagine the resources required to take charge of the pollution that has been there for decades in the whole of the Niger Delta. Mind you, you see, if it is just some oil that's spilled today, it will be easy to just dig out the bad earth, part of the earth, and begin to reclaim, see a way of doing it. But these things have been allowed to sink to various basins beneath 10, 15, 20, 30, even up to 100 meters beneath the surface which we are marching. So it is not just going to be an easy task. It will require a lot of commitment, dedication, passion, and of course, huge resources. And that's why I'm saying that for people from the northern part of Nigeria or from the southwest who have sat on these resources over the years in terms of being presidents, being oil ministers, and managing it, without properly cleaning the Niger Delta and without ensuring their development, to still begin to have a claim of right to still take further from this oil money, to begin to develop their regions is pathetic. It's pathetic. It's simply being insensitive, simply oppressing people because you have power, and you want a country to continue in that way. It is pathetic. It's clearly insensitivity, so it doesn't make sense to me.
All right, so we'd like to say a big thank you to you, Eze Onyenkpere, development lawyer, for sharing these valuable insights with us today on Global Morning.
My pleasure.
And that's what we're leaving it with this conversation. We're taking a quick break now, everyone. When we return, we'll turn our attention to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, particularly focusing on the last 1 year of Mr. Olanipekun Olukoyede as the chairman